They said, this is survivable, but your lives will never be the same. Hands down, gratitude has been the saving grace for our family throughout this whole situation. I'm just losing it, but I'm saying all of my thank yous.
Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Hey, welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Thank you for listening. This episode is brought to you by Reata Pharmaceuticals. Kyle, I don't know about you, but I'm loving the extra hour of sleep. This time of year is my favorite. The air is crisp, nice and cool, and of course, I get to sleep longer at least one day.
Do you notice the crisp air when you're sleeping?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. You can just see the crispiness out the window. Hey, what's the latest with your van and that whole process?
A few episodes ago, I gave a little update. Moss Rehab, where I had been doing my driver's training, they had closed down.
Okay.
And so I finally got an appointment at this other driving school. It's an hour away in a town that I'd never been to before, so that was kind of cool, actually, to see a new place in Pennsylvania. It's called Allentown. It was, like, really exciting to be there.
Sarcasm?
Yes.
Okay.
They tested my eyes. They tested my cognition, followed the dots, draw the lines, and respond to these questions as fast as you can. What does this look like? A dog, a bird, whatever,
Yeah.
So I did all that and then went out for road assessment. And then I found out that my counselor through the state, the program that I'm doing, she didn't realize that I had not gotten a designation on my license. I've been driving for 10 years with hand controls,
Right.
but I never got a designation on my license from the DMV because when I started driving, my instructor, who I drove with in a parking lot for about an hour, he wrote the prescription and it went directly to the company that was installing my hand controls. There was no DMV involved at all. So I've been driving for 10 years without the law knowing that I'm driving with hand controls. I have to go through that whole process. So the driving instructor said that she was going to start the paperwork with the state. They would send me a notice by snail mail in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Then we would have 30 days to do 6 hours of training and take the road test.
Wow.
This place is like an hour away. So I would go there, do an hour and a half of training, do that several times, and then take the road test. So that's where we're at. I think it's going to be a little bit longer, but moving along, we're getting there.
That's a bummer you have to drive that far. And then you have to be in the car with them for 6 hours?
Even though I've been driving for 10 years with hand controls, it's nerve-wracking to drive with someone else who seems to be watching your every move.
Every minute, for sure.
Yeah.
I feel that way just in walking. If I sense that somebody's really watching me, it's even worse.
Right. If they're like analyzing, trying to figure out how much you've had to drink and whether or not to call the cops.
Or they're just putting their own story together. It messes me up. Is driving without a designation, I don't know, illegal or just frowned upon?
That's a good question. I asked my counselor, and she's like, you shouldn't be driving without it. So I don't know if potentially I could get a ticket or something.
What about insurance? Does the insurance know you drive with hand controls? Do you have insurance?
Yes, I have insurance, but I don't know that it's noted anywhere on my insurance that I drive with hand controls. I don't even know that it's noted that my van has a ramp, and I don't know how that would change things or if it would.
I don't know either,
questions.
But might be worth looking into. Maybe you're safe, but for California, I feel like if I were in that position, I would definitely broach those subjects, because I feel like, at least in this state, if there were an accident, my insurance would probably say something like, oh, you drive with hand controls and you never told us, you're on your own. Again, I think that's true for California. You know, any way out is the way they're going to go. And they, I mean, like business in general, not just my insurance company.
Sometimes I take the stance of like, if I don't tell them, it doesn't matter. But I think you have a really good point that if something were to happen, they should probably know all the details so they don't find a way to deny the claim.
Put the pressure on you. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with all that. Kyle, the conversation we're about to play for our listeners inspired my, quote, search again today. Dr. Wayne Dyer is a pretty well-known voice. You know, I put him up there with maybe the John Maxwell's and Zig Ziglar of being, you know, just in terms of how many books he's written and being a motivational speaker and so on and so forth. He talks a lot about positive thinking and controlling what you and I can't control. This quote that I found that resonated with me today: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. In other words, it's all about your perspective. We're all going to have bad days. How you work through those things makes all the difference. And how you see the circumstances you're up against speaks volumes as to how you move forward.
You think sometimes, oh, there's no way to change this. But no, the way you perceive it, the way you think about it, the way you react is going to determine the outcome. That quote really just lays it out right there. So I like it a lot.
Speaking of some of the words you just said, there was another quote I saw, and I'm paraphrasing. I didn't lock this one down, but it said something to the effect of perspective is what makes the impossible possible. So I thought that was pretty powerful.
Oh my God, yeah.
From Wayne Dyer, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that's the quote of the week.
The following message is brought to you by Reata Pharmaceuticals.
Hey Kyle, you would say that there's no time like the present, right?
Yeah, of course. And?
Well, you know, like, now is the time. Be in the now. The moment is now.
Yeah, I would say focusing on the now is pretty important. But what are you getting at?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I just want to let our community know that Skyclarys omavaloxolone 50 milligram capsules is now available.
Of course. The first and only FDA-approved prescription medicine for Friedreich ataxia in patients 16 years and older is now available.
So if you or a loved one has FA, be sure to talk to your doctor to see if Skyclarys is right for you.
Now, dude. The time is now.
And to stay updated on all things Skyclarys, visit Skyclarys.com.
Before taking Skyclarys, tell your healthcare provider about your medical conditions and medicines you take. Skyclarys may cause serious side effects, including an increase in liver enzymes in your blood, increase in a blood protein which tells how well your heart is working, and changes in cholesterol levels. Your doctor will test these levels before and during treatment with Skyclarys. The most common side effects of Skyclarys include increased liver enzymes, headache, nausea, stomach pain, tiredness, diarrhea, and muscle pain. Call your doctor if you have any side effects. For additional information about Skyclarys, please see the full prescribing information and patient product information at www.skyclarys.com. This ad was brought to you by Reata Pharmaceuticals.
All right, John, you mentioned the interview we're about to have. We had a wonderful conversation with Caley Caroll. She is an amazing advocate for her son, Whitten. We really learned a lot from her perspective, and we know everyone else will too. Caley Caroll, thank you so much for giving us your time this morning. Welcome to Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So thank you for the opportunity.
It's like we've known each other for years. We know your name and everything.
We go way back.
We were connected through a mutual friend, someone that I met at the podcast move-in conference in Denver. A neat story of just a connection of a nice person. Her name is Jordan. How long have you known Jordan?
You know what? I would have to go back to social media and see the connection. Over the last decade, I've met so many different people, and it's like you guys probably experience the same thing, right? Where it's this big, beautiful community, and then you try to put the pieces back together, and you don't even remember how it started.
Yeah, totally. We would like to talk to you today about caregiving and taking care of your son and just all the implications on your family and your life and how you take care of yourself through the process. So why don't we start by just getting a little background about your son's story?
My baby boy, Whitten John, he was diagnosed with diabetes insipidus, which is now called arginine vasopressin deficiency, back in June of 2022. And what had happened is he was 20 months, and he was filling his diaper like so much. So he was going to the bathroom all the time. And we thought he was just potty training. We took him into the doctor multiple times. Their blood work, everything came back great. And eventually it was so disruptive that he was drinking gallons of water every single day to keep himself alive because he couldn't hold his urine in. So they do this test called a water deprivation test. It is perhaps the most miserable and traumatizing test. And thankfully, we haven't had to experience a lot of other ones. So for us, it was a really difficult evening at the hospital where they pulled water away. They discovered that he has this disease, rare disease. It's 1 in 25,000 people that have AVPD is the easiest thing to call it. And at the same time, the doctor informed me, which I didn't really understand how close these were tied, that was an implication that he probably had something called Langerhans cell histiocytosis. So he has not one, but 2 rare diseases. LCH is about 1 in every 200,000 people. So my life just in a moment at the hospital there, we walked back into the room after the test, and we had an oncologist, a neurologist, an endocrinologist, and the whole team was in the room before we even got up there. And that moment, as a mom with your 20-month-old, I had to actually hand my son off to my husband because I was like the caregiver, this moment of becoming going from mom to caregiver, the emotional, just roller coaster started in that moment.
Can you describe that moment a little more? I think a lot of people would be able to relate to it. A lot of our listeners have been in the same exact situation.
Mm-hmm. You don't even know how your body can physically respond. We think that we're in control. Actually, very poetic of the entire situation, right? We think we're in control of our body and our emotions. And it's like, I can handle this. So I'm trying to take the deep breaths, but I had to sit down. Like, might pass out in this moment. I can't breathe. My heart's beating so fast. I'm sweating, shaking. And it's this this realization that we get to control a lot of things, right? But not in this moment, and not with what my son's diagnosis was going to be. It was that moment of uncontrollable physical show up, as well as what our world was about to become.
I imagine there's a recalibration. You have a certain vision for your life, for your son, and all of a sudden it's different. And it obviously can't be reformed in that moment, but there's so much uncertainty, right? And so what's the difference in those two visions, and how'd you get there?
So number one, hands down, gratitude has been the saving grace for our family throughout this whole situation. So, that we were in the hospital for the next week. And one of the things that the doctor did share with us, because we didn't know about either disease, they said, this is survivable, but your lives will never be the same. Mm-hmm. And because the survival rate, the LCH is arguably cancer, blood disease, immune disease. It's all of the things. But it's 98%, 92% in his case, survivable, but you don't even know how to process it first, right? At first I was just like, I don't even understand what's happening. And for the next week in the hospital, it was purely survival mode, like how do we just keep breathing, remember to eat, do everything we can, because he was in and out of anesthesia, going NPO, getting ready for surgery, and not being able to drink for a child with diabetes insipidus who has to have water is very traumatic. So it was this very, very challenging situation that led to many more challenging situations, right? But in that, I just had to go back to my roots of what I've known and practiced, and, immediately, actually upon diagnosis, just started saying thank you. Thank you in prayer form, whatever that looks like. And just, thank you for these doctors that were able to find this. Thank you for the diabetes insipidus that will affect him for the rest of his life, but it's how we found the cancer. Thank you for the surgeons, swift hands that were able to get the biopsy. I have live videos actually of me when I got myself together enough to get back on my Good Morning Sunshine video that I do. And I'm like just losing it, but I'm saying all of my thank yous. So that's how I think over the next week, 6 months, year and a half, kind of got myself back reacclimated, and then providing those skill sets for the kids too.
How many kids do you have?
I have 4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. One in college, and then a senior in high school, and then a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So it's,
my goodness.
Yeah. Rare disease doesn't affect just the individual.
Yeah.
It affects the whole family, and all of us learning so much, over the last year and a half.
Considering your other kids, what have you seen has been the effect on them through this situation?
Even though it's been an interesting and challenging experience, it's been positive results, like my daughter, she was going to go to Alabama. She decided to stay in state. She loves to come home and be with her baby brothers, the closeness that just is there. And they've had closeness, but I think just an intensified level, not only in our relationships and our whole family, brothers to sister, and my senior son plays with the boys all the time, but also a connection with our gratitude and the perspective of how blessed we are and how lucky we are has been a big eye-opener for all of us. The 4-year-old, a little bit more challenging, right? Because he's like, wait, mom and dad are at the hospital again. They're gone. Like, he's like, all of a sudden I wake up and I'm in grandma and grandpa's bed. I was just over here, but we were at the ER. So I think for him, there's a little bit more healing that we're going to be doing now that we are kind of on the other side of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you say the other side. Before we get there, because I really do want to hear how he is today.
Yeah.
But a little more about the challenges that you guys have had in the last year and a half. You mentioned water retention, and you mentioned an ER visit just now. What are some of those things that you guys have had to really deal with and think on your feet and act for?
Yeah, man, we could, you said 30 minutes. How long did we know? So first thing, I guess, was like when I moved from the role of, mother, entrepreneur, business, really loving and passionate about my jobs, going straight into caregiver. Working was not an option. It was, in and out of calls with doctors nonstop, trying to figure out, things like insurance that people don't, right? Like really consider. That's a full-time job, trying to figure out all of that, advocating for the specialists, because we had to find some specialists down in Texas who are more familiar with the combination of diseases for an infant, traveling to Texas to see our specialists. Neutropenia, right? So he's been in chemotherapy. He's had 58 chemo infusions. The first 2 did not work. So LCH is like this. It's rare in the sense that it kind of can hide from chemo. And each person reacts differently to different chemo treatments. So we started with like the first line, and our doctor here he needed to be doing something different because of his second rare disease. So we moved to the second line. And the first one was not that hard, right? We just went in once on Monday, and then he had five days off. So it was like, it wasn't bad. And then we moved to a more intense one after talking to our specialists. And that one I administered at home. It's like, I'm going from a mom to being like, I'm giving my son his chemo treatments at home, wildly different. Also didn't have a lot of negative feedback from that treatment, but then we did his biopsies and we found 5 additional tumors. So originally he just had one in his pituitary, one in his scalp, one in his hip that was pretty big. We went back in and it's in his femur, his pelvis, his rib, his arm. That moment, right after a few months of doing treatments and going through this and continuously thinking that I was going to be on the other side.
Yeah.
Continuously being like, okay, like I'll start back up with my job and my businesses, and no, it's going to be then. And like, you think that it's there, but you're like, wow, I have no idea. Again, I'm not in control of this. I'm only in control of how I react to it. So we got to the point here where we find the 5 new tumors. And I remember doing my video and sharing about this, and I think it was called I'm Grateful for the Tumors. Like, I had to give myself to that, like really connect to it. And so then we started a 3rd string of chemo. This one was much more aggressive, 5 days in the hospital. We got to leave, but 5 days of getting treatments. And then for the next, we have to hide out is what we call it. So we would have like hideout week for 2 weeks because he's so neutropenic. We can't really leave the house. Grocery shopping's online. It's back to 2020 all over again. We're in hideout mode. Then we have 2 weeks of our heaven weeks where we would go out and just like hope he doesn't get sick or catch something, because a babysitter on chemo, people on chemo, right? You got to pour it in. You have a slight fever. You're into the hospital. You're in the ER. They're gonna keep you if your numbers don't go up. So it was a literally 16 months of unknown every day, wondering what was going to be next. Is he going to be barfing today? Or what a funny lighter note, he won't wear anything but footy pajamas since December.
I like this kid.
We're having a pajama day. I'm like, let's call that a pajama year. We're footy pajamas. So that kind of gives you a little insight to what that looks like. I know one of your questions was about caregiving, of how do you take care of yourself?
Yep.
When you're doing everything you can to take care of this small human and supporting him to survive not only the diseases, but the treatment for the diseases. And that was, and still is, something I'm learning. One of the biggest lessons I feel like I was presented through this situation is learning how to receive. A lot of us have a hard time receiving, and letting the community, letting family show up for us in all sorts of ways, whether that was meals or toys that would randomly show up for Whitten, and prayers and comments, and, people wearing Whitten John gear and financial support. That was a big thing for me. And in order to take care of myself and focus on him and what we needed to do and still be there for myself, right? Show up for me, just letting other people in.
When you talk about community there, you've mentioned it a couple of times. How did you connect? How did you find your tribe? Because it's still new. It's only been a year and a half. ish? How do you
Yeah.
find your people?
So I have been building community online. I am so grateful. Social media, right? Some things it's like, ooh, but it's amazing. It's connected me to people over the last decade, and following diagnosis, I don't know, I think like followers on Facebook like increased by 90,000. I don't know if they're fighting me or I'm finding them through our live videos, but I do live videos. I try to 5 days a week. So I connect a lot there. People get to learn our story. This was really difficult for me because you guys know sometimes when we're being vocal, you're going to get negative responses. You're going to get jabs. Oh, so there's been some hard things where there was one point where it's like, maybe I got to get off social media. I don't know if I can emotionally handle what's coming at me, but my stance that I took and that I talked to the people that do share the love, all the rest of the percentage out there, is that I feel this responsibility to share. I feel this responsibility to talk about LCH and to talk about AVPD and to talk about the emotional process and really make sure that people know that it's not just the highlight reel. Like I show everything. Like this is my real life. And I think the community they like to know that you're human, They like to know that you have all the different sides, that I'm not just going to show the happy days. So if you're if you're a part of us, if you're a part of that community, it's usually from followers. They see it all. People I don't even know, that have just shown up for our family in this huge way. It's wild.
You seem like a person who wears their heart on their sleeve, and I love it. Have you found that difficult? I just don't do that very well. Does that come naturally to you?
I would say maybe it does a little bit more naturally because I know that we all are in different places. But I would say before, the way people would describe me is like topical relationships, right? But I don't go deep. So but since all of this, I do feel like we are offered experiences, even if they're really challenging ones, so that we can help others. Like that's right. It comes to us so that we can help others. So I feel like not wearing it on my sleeve is not an option, to go through all of this and then just keep it here for us and our family. And granted, our family, they've had some beautiful transformations, but I'll give you an example. I had a friend call me recently and never get a call from her. I haven't talked to her for a long time. And she calls and she's like, I just want to thank you. And then she just starts crying, and she starts talking about some different illnesses that have just entered her family and how because of the things that I've been doing, the way that I've showed up in my authenticity, that she feels like she can pull gratitude in these situations. So like you get a call like that and all of those naysayers and the negative comments and the fear of wearing your heart on your shoulder. It's like, you know what? Good. We got to be big. We were meant to be big.
Yeah.
It's hard to be big sometimes, but we were meant to share.
That's an awesome concept. We recently had a conversation with a friend. Like when these challenges get put in your lap, they're not there to break you. They're there to make you. I'm stealing that from a friend named Jacob that says that, but it's a really neat thing to think of it as, all right, I need to step up because I'm being called right now. I'm not being crushed. I'm being called. And I can see that's how you are taking this situation.
Yeah. And not that there weren't the moments, right? We've all had the moments where we want to just crawl up in a little ball in the corner. That's when you just take a deep breath and you say, thank you. My eyes open today, right? I love that I have vision. This is amazing. My ears work pretty good. Sometimes, maybe not, So that's where I call any time where I feel myself cowering in is where I call up and say, thank you for whatever I can that's around.
I want to go back to the caregiver inside of you and how you advocate for your son. I'm curious, is there anything that you've learned over the 1.5, 2 years that you wish you would have known sooner? And could you highlight a couple of those for future moms and dads or future people that might find themselves in the position you're in currently in maybe a year or two?
Sean, I love that question. And I giggle at it because I'm like, where's the handbook? Where is the chemo
Right.
mom handbook?
Do this, then do this, then yeah.
Yes, yeah, I need a checklist because I have
Right.
no idea what I'm doing. So I guess I would say a couple of them. Number one, you touched on it, advocacy. Your intuition as a parent, your intuition as a mom or dad or someone who loves the people around us, or listen to your gut, because my son's PCP, she hadn't seen the condition for 17 years. It's not go to,
Yeah.
So listening to your gut and it's sometimes it's hard when you're speaking with doctors, right? And people that are in this authoritative position that they do all this, but your child. So I felt there were so many times where he was being received as a textbook case, and he's not a textbook. He's my baby, So letting yourself be strong and stand in your intuition and have those conversations with the doctors, this is what I'm feeling. I want to try something different. I am going to get a second opinion, because sometimes you feel like, oh, but I don't want to step on their toes. So that's one thing that I would say. Standing your own. The other piece, I think, just goes back to the community and learning to say yes to receive, and learning to say no, that you don't, things that you used to do before that you kind of feel like you should still do, like no, like right now, this is time for my family. No, I can't do that. And I used to be a big say yes to everything, say yes to life, do all, still am, but sometimes having those boundaries and saying no, like letting parents know that it's okay if you need to close some things off while you focus on this period of your life. I'd say those are two big ones. We need a whole handbook, so let's work on that.
Agreed.
This is your contribution partly to the handbook, and your contribution to the handbook has been all the videos that you've done and all the connections that you've made. And it's really amazing when the community can come together and create that handbook that is so sorely needed.
We actually went to a gala for the Hope Kids. Hope Kids is an organization that supports families who have life-altering diseases in their children. And I got to connect with some other moms about that. Like, let's start to build a tribe so we can figure out how to develop something that, hospitals could have, especially people that don't have social media, because, all the support groups on there are very beneficial, but a lot of people don't have that. They don't have the connection. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah.
So I wanted to ask about, you mentioned a couple of businesses and a whole life that you put on hold to take care of your son. And so can you talk about that a little bit? What are your interests outside of your amazing son?
It's funny, you guys, you have the form that I filled out before, and it had bio, and it's, I looked at that box and I was like, what do I used to know what to put in that box. What do I put in my bio box? Because previously I've been a health coach, fitness coach, which the physical transformation started to go to the mental transformation. So then a mindset coach, and I enjoy entrepreneurship. So creating some businesses that support both mind and body transformation, and very much so that was my connection. But coming out of this, you learn a lot about yourself. And I don't know. I think the answer, Kyle, might be that I just don't know. I am writing a book about gratitude to support people to learn the skill set that I believe if they had before the storm came, how much they could travel lighter and with more love. So that's something I'm in the process of editing right now, hopefully to be published at the beginning of next year.
Exciting.
But yeah, outside of that, I love this. I love talking. I love sharing. I used to speak a lot to support people with their businesses. I'd love to speak, but we'll have to see where this next chapter takes me. And I'm really excited to start to explore, but I also want to be present for the celebration, the time that we're in now.
Speaking of that, I wanted to circle back to how's your son doing at the moment? Because I know when we talked a few months ago, maybe we texted, you were just telling me about the process of the chemo and where you guys are at. So how's he doing right now?
Right now, he's sick like a normal kid is sick. Right now, he's downstairs. He just had a fever all last week. And although that sounds like, ooh, that must be, nope, it's a good thing. He's sick like a like a normal child is sick, and we're celebrating that, which is wild.
Yeah.
He had his scans just at the beginning of the month, and neither one of his diseases are curable. I don't know the quite right languaging to use, but he's NAD. So he has no active disease, which means his LCH, the tumors are gone. The bones are healing. The bone in his skull is almost as like just barely has to close, and his hip is healed. So the other tumors are gone. His ABPD, we'll see an endocrinologist forever, and we'll learn how to maneuver that. That's the next chap. That's going to be great. We'll learn a lot of new things to advocate for and experience. But, physically, he's finding his next new normal. He's my little miracle. And I found myself before saying like, oh, he's going to go back to normal, but he's not normal. He's extraordinary. He's still wearing footsie pajamas. He still only eats ice cream cones. I don't know if he ate this week. We're not taking too many notes. We'll figure it out. He's still growing. He's having these wild terrors. Like, you know what a night terror is? But in the middle of the day, and I don't know if it's everything leaving his body, but there's this chemo hangover, I guess, that people say there is for 6 months to maybe a couple years of his body reacclimating to this new norm. And I couldn't be more grateful. We're done with chemo treatments unless something else arises. The reoccurrence rate for his to come back because of the aggressive therapy that we did is about 15%. And all we can do is keep running our scans and doing life and just being aware as a caregiver again, and mother, just to see watching for little things that we might have to go back in for. And then I manage the other disease with medication, and we'll learn about that, like I said.
Well, he seems like a really strong little boy to be able to put up with all this. It sounds like he's got an incredible role model and caregiver to take care of him.
He's definitely my hero, and not just mine. He's taken a stand. He doesn't even know. He just turned 3 a couple days ago. He has no idea how many lives he has already changed by being him and facing this head on, and not just accepting it, but embracing it. It's who he gets to be, and that's really cool. It's really cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, Caley, can you tell us how our listeners might connect with you? Where's the best place for them to go?
Absolutely. Love building the community. So you can find me at Caley Caroll, and that's Caley spelled crazily. Okay. So Caley Caroll on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Caley Woodward Caroll if you're on the Facebook. I'd love to offer everybody the opportunity to take a step back. I always say that perspective reveals miracles. And when things don't seem like they're going how you want them to go and how you think they should go, or what things should be like, back up a couple steps, or maybe you have to go all the way to the, outer space, and just take a look down. And if you can change your perspective, you can discover that there are miracles all around you.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us and giving us your perspective this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for everything that you're doing and the stand that you're taking for everybody out there to be more educated. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thanks, Caley.
Thank you.
Sean, I was surprised the first time I heard Caley talk about gratitude for the terrible situation that her family is in because of these illnesses. Mm-hmm. Going back to your quote of the week, the way she's looking at things and choosing to be grateful for some of the things that come along with this situation, I thought that was really powerful.
I don't know her personally. I don't know what she's like day in and day out, what it's like to have a cup of coffee with her, but she strikes me as the kind of person that truly does find a way to express gratitude and discover gratitude in even the hardest situations. A lot of people say, oh, be grateful, but when the rubber meets the road, it's hard to do that. How can you be grateful for things that turn your life upside down? But I feel like of the people I've met, she seems to be the most genuine in having the ability to remain grateful.
Speaking of gratitude, every episode we close out with some thank you notes. Sean, who is your thank you note going out to today?
I'm saying thank you to Caley. Not only for coming on, being a part of the show, but something she said I appreciate hearing. It's encouraging to get permission to say no. She was talking about family life, and sometimes you just have to step back and say no to some things and focus on other things, and I appreciate that. I don't remember what she said exactly word for word, but something to the effect of it's okay to close some things out or down for a period. Maybe it's forever. Maybe, bowling was your side hobby and you're a part of a bowling league, and maybe you need to not do that anymore. Whatever the case, I feel appreciative to hear that reminder that it's okay to say no every now and then.
My thank you note goes out to the team behind Beacon Impatience. It's a type of flower, and it's specifically made by this company, Pan American Seed. And they do a campaign every year where they sell their Beacon Impatience, and they donate part of the proceeds to a charity. And this year, they chose the Friedrichs Ataxia Research Alliance. They made a donation recently of $36,000.
Wow.
We had a giant check at Red Ataxia Dallas, and they did our presentation at the beginning of the day, and it was really, really great. So thank you to Beacon.
That's awesome. Thank you, Beacon. And, of course, thank you again to Caley for being on the show today. This episode has been brought to you in part by Reata Pharmaceuticals. Be sure to view our show notes for links to some of Caley's stuff where you can connect with her easily. Please share the show. And just as importantly, write that review. I know you're wanting to. I can see it in your face right now. You're like, oh my gosh, I need to do that. Just do it. Just take a minute and give us your thoughts on whatever platform you listen to. We look forward to talking to you again next week. I hope you're enjoying the extra hour of sleep as well. Until next time, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.